Hi friends, now we are going to study innate behavior. Innate behavior or behavior is a genetically modulated outward expression, action or reaction of organism in response to the stimuli from a given situation. To put in a different way, behavior is a genetically modulated response of an organism to the signal from its environment. Next is patterns of animal behavior. There are two major patterns of animal behavior. One is innate behavior and the other one is acquired behavior. Innate behavior is inborn, inherited, unlearned, uh, inflexible and automatic behavior. On the other hand, learned behavior or acquired behavior is gained from experience, and it is flexible or changeable, and it produces new experiences. Innate behavior is a automatic, inborn, instinctive, inherited, unlearned and genetically pre-programmed behavior governed by specific genes. It is mostly stimulus bound, and in it a particular pattern of stimuli trigger a sense of responses. Innate behavior is genetically predetermined by the inheritance of specific pre-programmed built-in pathways. As a result of this built-in pathways, innate behavior is rigidly fixed in the sense that specific stimulus always evoke the same response. Although the behavioral response can be modified by training, the response to such training are not the same in all members of the species. Differences do occur reflecting the past experience of the animal. The patterns of instinctive behavior involve and get refined and perfected through natural selection over many generations. Their adaptive significance lies in the survival value they provide to species and also in their freedom from higher nerve centers. As a rule, instinctive behavior may not be modified by environmental factors. However, in many species, it undergoes modification due to the interaction with the environment. Innate behavior can be useful for the survival of the individuals of a species so long as it is evolved in essential activities that rarely require modification. However, it has a major drawback in that it cannot be modified when new situations demand a change. Innate behavior is predominant in those animals which have short life cycle, simple nervous system and little contact with parents. The major component of innate behavior is orientation, symbol reflexes and instincts. Orientation is the spatial adjustment of or directional movement of animals induced by external or internal stimuli and initiated by the endogenous activity. It involves the positioning of the whole body or part of it in the relation of the external environment. Orientation is usually occurred by the movement or rotation of the body around the longitudinal, transverse or dorsoventral axis. The rotation of the body is in the longitudinal axis is called rolling, and that of in a transverse axis is called pitching. Orientation are of two types. One is primary orientation and second is secondary orientation. Primary um, orientation is the establishment and balancing of the basic body posture in space. Secondary orientation is the positioning and movement of the body in response to various stimuli. And locomotor orientation is two kinds: taxis and kinesis. Taxis or taxis movement is the directional orientation or locomotor movement of an animal towards or away from the source of stimulus or a combination of stimuli. It is continuously and specifically guided by the external stimuli. In the direction of movement is determined by the directional external stimulus. Thus, is a stimulus bounded response occurring with a reference to the direction of a stimulus. Taxis movement are of two major categories. One is positive taxis and negative taxis. Positive taxis is the movement of animal towards stimulus, and negative taxis is the movement away from the stimulus. This table shows the different kinds of taxic and kinetic movement. Light, temperature, heat, chemical, touch or contact, gravity, electric current, water current, ഇവയെല്ലാം തന്നെ നേച്ചർ ഓഫ് സ്റ്റിമുലസ് ആണ്. ലൈറ്റ് വരുമ്പോൾ ഫോട്ടോ ടാക്സിസ് അല്ലെങ്കിൽ ഫോട്ടോ കൈനോസിസ് ആവും. ടെമ്പറേച്ചർ വരുമ്പോൾ ടാക്സിസ് എന്താവും, തെർമോ ടാക്സിസും കൈനോസിസ് എന്തായിട്ട് മാറും, തെർമോ കൈനോസിസ് എന്ന് പറയും. കെമിക്കൽ വരുമ്പോൾ കീമോ ടാക്സിസും കീമോ കൈനോസിസ് എന്ന് പറയും. Next is types of taxic movement. First is clinotaxis. This is the form of orientation in which the successive comparison of the intensity of stimulus is taken as a reference. So it involves the successive comparison of the intensity of the stimulus in the nearby parts of the body. A typical example is the lateral swinging of or a wavy movements of the head or a whole body for detecting the direction of the stimulus. In clinotaxis, the receptor organ is unstable to detect the source and direction of the stimulus. So the animal tries to compare the intensity of the stimulus on one side of the body with the intensity of the other side. This is affected by turning the receptor to one side at the first and then to the other side. Repeated comparison of the intensity of the stimulus would enable the animal to turn until both the sides are equally stimulated. Next is strobotaxis. Strobotaxis is a type of orientation in which there is a simultaneous comparison of the intensity of the stimulus received by two or more receptors. In it, bilateral receptors are used for simultaneous comparison between the two sides for detecting the source and direction of the stimulus. Next is telotaxis. Telotaxis is the directional taxic movement which does not depend upon the simultaneous comparison of the stimulation from two receptors. If there are two sources of similar stimuli, the animal will select any one of them and move towards or away from it, and never in a median direction. Next is menotaxis. Menotaxis is a light compass response. In it, orientations towards the source of stimulus occur at a definite angle to the direction of the stimulant. It serves as a behavioral mechanism for maintaining a constant direction of orientation. The sun compass navigation of many insects, fishes, and birds is a typical examples of menotaxis. These animals use sun as a guidance in homing. It is found in ants, bees, and some aquatic crustaceans. The other kind of locomotor orientation is kinesis. Kinesis is the non-directional random orientation of animals in which the rate of response of the animal is proportional to the intensity of the stimulus rather than the direction. In kinesis, the animal is not oriented in relation to the source of the stimulus. Movement of the wood louse is a typical example. It is more active in low level of humidity and it is moved quickly in dry atmosphere. There are two kinds of kinesis and clinokinesis and orthogenesis. Clinokinesis, it is a orientation in which the rate of change of direction or angular velocity increases in proportions to the increase in the intensity of external stimuli. Whereas in orthogenesis is the animal's speed of locomotion is directly proportional to the intensity of the stimulus and the linear velocity of the body and independent of the spatial properties of the stimulus. Next is simple reflexes. It is a major component of the innate behavior. Reflexes are stereotype and involuntary response of the parts of an organism to an environmental stimuli. They are determined by an inherited pattern of neurons in brain and spinal cord. So there are two major kinds of reflexes, namely cranial reflexes and spinal reflexes. The cranial reflexes is initiated by cranial neurons, whereas the spinal reflexes is initiated by the spinal neurons. Although these are the involuntary response, they can be modified by brain in accordance with the demands of the circumstance and also in the light of previous experience. Under certain circumstances, innate and acquired types of behavior overlap and blend together, and the reflex action is now called conditional reflexes. Reflexes are two classes. One is tonic reflex and phasic reflex. Tonic reflex are relatively slow and long-lasting adjustment, and they maintain muscular tone, body posture, and equilibrium. On the other hand, the phasic reflexes are rapid and short-living adjustment, and they mainly deal with the emergencies. Next is instincts. Instincts are complex, inborn, inherited, unlearned stereotype and species-specific behavior pattern produced in response to sudden changes in the environment. And they provide immediate adaptive survival value to the organism. They differ from simple reflex in their degree of complexity. They are genetically determined and are governed by the complex genes and can be modified by natural selection. Instinctive behavior patterns are considered primitive as compared to learned behavior and are regarded as fixed action patterns. The signals which elicit instinctive response or reactions in an animal are called releases.